Eiji Tsuburaya was raised Buddhist, as was tradition for his family. However, in later years after marrying, he would follow his wife into Roman Catholicism. This seems like irrelevant information. You're probably asking, Nikki, why must you bring religion into this review of a 50-year-old Tokusatsu show? And well, the reason for that is that Ultraman, the follow-up in answer to Ultra Q's harrowing questions, is something that can be understood pretty clearly whenever you consider this religious context. As humans, we tend to instinctively search for higher powers because sometimes life's cruelty puts us in a place mentally that gets all existential and weird. As someone that spent a good deal of my adolescence in church, I can see how it helps people out. Faith in God really has a way of making things make sense for some people. I know, for instance, that it really helped my parents out. That's why I could never really call Christians idiotic or foolish for their religion alone. Now, when it comes to their actions... Now, I'm not religious anymore due to reasons I don't really feel like getting into in a video essay about goddamn Ultraman, but I've lived a lot of life, both as a religious person and a non-religious person, so I'm definitely able to call it as I see it. So I think it's important to note that Eiji Tsuburaya was a Christian convert. It's one thing to be raised religious. You kind of take things for granted. The word of adults is law, so there's no reason to doubt it. It just wouldn't make sense to doubt it until you reach your adolescence at least. But to be converted? That takes work and personal experience. To convert to a religion is to look at your life up to that point, and look at this religion, and decide that it's both helpful to you and makes total sense for your picture of the world. It's a pretty big thing. So big that it changes everything. So that relationship with God turns out stronger than most relationships with God that are raised in children, at least in my experience. That leads me to think that Tsuburaya's relationship with God had a really huge effect on the work that he was involved in his later years. And buddy, I think Ultraman's got some shit to say about God. Ultraman premiered a single week after Ultra Q aired its final episode. But Ultraman wasn't prepared to just simply replace Ultra Q and pretend it never happened. Instead, Ultraman clearly acts as a sequel to Ultra Q. The answer to its question, as I stated in my previous video about Ultra Q. A major way that it shows this is the way that Ultraman opens every single episode with the familiar Ultra Q title card and then blasting it away, revealing the title card for Ultraman. Ultraman's world is not too far off from the world of Ultra Q. While it is an alternate universe, this is still a world constantly threatened by malicious powers that be descending from the sky, crawling out of the earth, or coming out of hiding from the very world we find comfort in. The one difference is that in this world, there exist people willing to help, outfitting themselves with the tools and know-how to deal with these threats in whatever way they can. These people are the Science Patrol, and damn do they try their best. The Science Patrol are as follows. Captain Muramatsu, the stern, pipe-smoking captain that heads up the patrol. Arashi, the patrol's marksman and resident tough guy, but not too tough. Ide, the goofball inventor and secret heart of the team. Fuji, the communications operator of the team and girl. Hoshino, a kid that tags along with the patrol and proves to be more helpful than he looks. And finally, Hayata, an all-rounder on the patrol that's quite serious about the job and also the secret host for Ultraman. Ultraman is a fairly episodic show, so it really depends on these characters to rope you in and make you feel attached, so that you stick with the show as it develops. The team has a real chemistry, probably the best of any show that I've covered on this show so far. There's an interesting kinship here between everyone that feels deeper than just co-workers, but also comes just shy of feeling like a true family group. Every character in the main cast is someone that I care about to some degree, ranging from Ide being my far and away favorite, and Hayata being probably my least favorite, but he turns into Ultraman and that's cool as fuck, so Hayata's all good with me. This is all variations on very good, so it's not like anyone's bad or anything. Ultraman is also a fair bit longer than Ultra Q. A cool 39 episodes compared to Q's more brisk 28. This gives the show more room to breathe and live with its characters, and also to push the show's themes further and further. Over just 39 episodes, Ultraman treads an impressive amount of ground with its own concepts. It sets up a basic format. Science Patrol go about their business. They find something weird. The weirdness actually has a link to some alien. Science Patrol try to deal with said alien. Alien rampages, or alien grows big and rampages. That's most of the time. And then Hayata summons Ultraman to deal with the threat. Wash, rinse, repeat. If you were a kid in the 60s in Japan, then the reason you kept coming back for more Ultraman every week was probably for the big fight at the end. A cool thing kind of happens with Ultraman that you don't really see in things like Kamen Rider or Super Sentai, and that's that the monsters get a lot of special treatment in this series. They get billed at the beginning credits of every episode right before the show kicks off, and monsters from back in the 60s still show up to this day in new episodes of Ultraman. So really you could be a kid and be a fan of either the monsters or the heroes and still have a good time. Though, I mean, Ultraman always wins. This is even brought up in the one two-part episode of the series. The episode's concerning the monster Gamora, where they center on a kid important to the plot that's a self-proclaimed monster prince that knows the ins and outs of each monster in the universe that's shown up to that point. It's a lot of fun. The progression of the actual effects and stunt work in Ultraman is super cool to see looking back. The monster suits are basically always top-notch, but Ultraman himself seemed to be a bit of a learning experience. The face in the original suit didn't quite look right, and the fights started out pretty bare bones and messy. Ben Furia, the suit actor for Ultraman, was a gymnast before working on the show and didn't have much experience with suit acting, so he was mainly picked for his physique. He had to be guided through the process as the series progressed, and the suits in the fights just get better and better over the course of the series, to the point where the final suit at the end of the show is a work of art, and some of the fights in the later half of the show are absolutely to die for. The fights get fucking brutal too. These monsters don't mess around, and Ultraman doesn't either. As I talked about in my Kuga episode, there's a bit of that grit that comes along with knowing that these bodies are actually colliding with each other and operating in real space. It's something that only is really still celebrated in this genre, and it's one of the things that makes it special, and Ultraman is certainly no exception. It's kind of the rule. The action in this show was kind of just always a joy. The Thunderbirds-esque model plane action also adds a good amount of fun and variation to the action of any given show. Before long, the show really starts to turn in on itself and start looking deeper, and that's when things start getting really interesting. Again, it's important to remember that this show is basically TV Tokusatsu's Big Bang moment. This is one of the first times any format had been introduced for Tokusatsu on the small screen, let alone one centered around a hero character. For the show to recognize an already proven format within its debut season, and start pushing the boundaries to see what else the format can do, that's unbelievably impressive and forward-thinking. In episode 13, the Science Patrol deals with an extremely combustible monster, and their luck runs out as their struggle reaches an oil reserve. Due to an itchy trigger finger, Ide messes up and shoots at the monster and sets fire to much of the oil in the reserve. What follows is an absolutely chaotic and shocking display of a situation spinning completely out of control. The episode completely shifts gears to becoming a full-on disaster piece, and the situation at hand becomes, how do we stop these flames? And to add to this, the monster turns out to not even be dead yet either, and so Ultraman has to show up and fix everything in one fell swoop. As part of Ultraman's answer to Ultra Q's question, the show explores a central theme in the worthiness of mankind to stand up and deal with threats. Can we protect the planet that we live on? Can we protect ourselves? Ultraman begins with Hayata investigating two beings that seem to be in combat, and inadvertently saves Ultraman's life during this clash with the alien Bemular. After this, Ultraman becomes convinced of mankind's ability to protect and spread a message of peace, so he offers his help to Hayata for whenever Hayata may need it. Hayata ends up needing that help a lot. In episode 13, Ide and the Science Patrol prove that they need a lot more help than they might think. Humanity has a lot of work to do. There's a constant push-pull in the show, between simpler episodes pitting our heroes against foreign threats, and more complex, contemplative episodes where the Science Patrol takes a hard look at themselves and their place in this conflict and what it means to protect the Earth. This back and forth is what I think makes Ultraman such an engaging and fun watch to this day. You're watching this team live out their lives, experience both the highs and the lows, and figure out just this whole thing. If Ultra Q was ever weak, it was because it would sometimes just present questions without ever really engaging with them. Ultraman is all about that engagement. In the later parts of the show, Ultraman ultimately takes a very sympathetic stance on the alien threats. More of the episodes at this point have to do with trying to avoid killing the threats every episode, and instead trying to find alternate methods.
Now let's talk about episode 35, a great example of the shift in the show's attitude towards monsters. Yes, this is the Bonzi Buddy voice.
Episode 35, The Monster Graveyard, is also a huge highlight because it's an episode that marks the shift that the show goes through in being more sympathetic towards its threats, and it kind of recontextualizes the whole show in my eyes. It's a simple episode. Arashi and Ide are exploring space to keep an eye out for any extra threats, and they happen upon a sort of monster graveyard that's popped up in the aftermath of all the Patrol and Ultraman's encounters with alien threats. Fuji urges Muramatsu and the rest of the crew to hold a memorial service for the monsters that they fought along the way, as most of them weren't conscious of the threat that they were posing to Earth, and the Patrol could have dealt with things differently. Hayata leaves for a second out of regret.
心ならずも葬った数々の怪獣たちに対し、ウルトラマンはおそらく心の中で詫びていたに違いない。そしてその翌日、科学特捜隊本部では怪獣供養が行われたのである。
And then they proceed with the memorial. After inadvertently tagging along on a mission, a monster called Sibozu touches down on Earth. The Science Patrol takes a decidedly pacifist approach here, trying to simply take him back up to space without hurting him. Hayata even summons Ultraman to try and take the monster back up, but it takes too much energy. The Patrol notices that the monster sort of gravitated towards Ultraman, so they take the unconventional approach of decorating a rocket to look like Ultraman so that the monster takes hold of the rocket and flies the fella back up to space. See you later, big fella. Even if a couple episodes right after these two don't really follow up on the theming, I see these two episodes as a full shift that was made in the progression of the show, going from the Science Patrol being more gung-ho about destroying alien threats to the Patrol being genuine problem solvers, looking at each unique situation and deciding from there if they have the tools necessary to enact the best solution. If they do, then perfect. If they don't, then they get creative. I love this about this show. Ultraman is rightfully remembered for the mark that it made on both the tokusatsu and superhero genres in Japan. It's a landmark action show for basically all of the obvious reasons. What kept me coming back, though, was the human element. The answer to Ultra Q's question. Ultra Q ultimately asks, what can we do as humans against a world that seems dead set on our destruction? Destruction both physical and mental. Ultraman's answer is, we adapt. Past all of the effects work and all the superheroics, Ultraman is actually a story about human evolution on a microscopic scale. Here we have a small team of humans dedicated to dealing with the most enormous threats to humankind, specifically Japan, has ever seen. This is a story about their slow evolution into people that handle these situations with grace and intelligence, avoiding violence when it isn't needed, and acting swiftly when it's deemed necessary. Along the way, in Ultraman, we find some helpful reserves of luck on our side. The sentence finds its period in the final episode, Farewell Ultraman. In this final episode, the Science Patrol faces their greatest challenge yet in Zeton. Aliens swarm in with their ships and engage with Earth forces, causing many casualties. A single alien Zeton takes the identity of someone close to the patrol and destroys their base of operations. This episode really feels frantic and hopeless. A giant Zeton touches down on Earth, and Hayata does what he obviously must. He summons Ultraman to fight the Zeton. In the heat of their fight, Zeton employs a reversal move to fire Ultraman's beam back at him, and this instantly shuts Ultraman down, and he starts to die. Ultraman's been in peril before, but he's always fought it off. This time is different. He was swiftly defeated. A couple of really special things start to happen here, though. Ide and Arashi jump onto the scene, and Ide decides to test out a new rocket attachment for Arashi's gun so that he can destroy monsters in one shot. Arashi tries it out, and it actually works. So for the first time, an alien swiftly takes out Ultraman, but at the same time, mankind is able to swiftly destroy an alien. While Ultraman and Hayata are nearing death, a messenger from the planet M78 appears to the two. M78 is where Ultraman is from. Zafi, one of the Ultra Brothers, has a conversation with Ultraman, who, doesn't seem to have a name? Maybe it's just Ultraman? That'd be weird. It'd be kind of like naming someone human. I'm gonna try and not worry about it. Zafi tries to convince Ultraman to cut his losses and come with Zafi to M78 so that he can heal. To do this, he has to leave the humans he's devoted himself to helping this entire time. To Zafi, the humans are a lesser species that don't need all this time and energy devoted to them. Ultraman responds by arguing for humankind, that they're worthy no matter what, and that they are an incredible species and capable of so much growth that's been clearly demonstrated throughout the series, and growth that they've just completed by defeating Zeton on their own. Ultraman pleads with Zafi that he split the life force between Ultraman and Hayata so that both may live, and Hayata may live out a normal life with his friends. And Zafi does what he asks. The Science Patrol, thankful for all that Ultraman has done for them, waves goodbye to him as he leaves with Zafi to M78. Hayata, however, seems to have forgotten everything that's happened to him since the plane accident in the first episode. And that's the ending of Ultraman. Here is where we loop back around to Tsuburaya's Christian background. This may seem like a stretch, but I really just couldn't help but see something distinctly religious about this final episode in particular. Religion is all about a belief in entities and powers way bigger than yourself. It's an idea that can both instill great hope and great fear. I believe kaiju works really embody this super well, whether intentional or not. I mean, look no further than the very recent Godzilla King of the Monsters, where, despite its issues, that movie takes a really interesting religious angle in its depiction of monsters and the destruction that they cause. Monsters usually stand in for wrath, the Earth's wrath, the wrath of spiritual powers that be, any kind of larger-than-life wrath. However, in Ultraman, we get one of the first depictions of grace in kaiju media. Ultraman is the guy looking out for us, fighting the fights that we literally cannot fight. Not the fights we don't want to fight or don't know to fight. The fights that completely outclass and overwhelm us. The fights that Ultra Q threatens. Ultraman is, for lack of a more delicate way to word this, Jesus Christ. And he was sent here from heaven, this time being a faraway alien planet. He descends from his world of light, inhabited by God and his angels, to teach grace and compassion to mankind. In the show, this is shown by the evolution and sophistication of the tactics of the Science Patrol evolving and the growing compassion towards the monsters in the latter parts of the show. Eventually, Jesus is stricken down, and God argues about humanity's worth, that they didn't deserve Jesus' grace, and that they have to work towards Jesus' grace. However, this is where Ultraman differs, where Ultraman becomes a sort of evolution, a reworking of the New Testament. Boy, I just said it. God, this is a lot. I hope you guys are still hanging with me here. I'm really putting in some work on this one. Do you have any idea how, like, how it is to just, like, make a point and then you believe that point, but whenever you say it out loud, it sounds crazy as hell. Um, Please stick with me. This final episode of Ultraman feels really special and revelatory to me because it tells a version of this story where Jesus actually talks back and argues that humanity's fine as is. They'll make it on their own. They don't need to give all themselves to God or, swear allegiance to Ultraman or to Christ or, or have to work really hard to become worthy of their light, their love, their protection. They already are. They'll find their own way with a slight nudge in the right direction. They've gotten to this point. They've already worked for it. That's true grace. That's love. That's why I love this stuff. It's so powerful to me. Tokusatsu art, really speaks to me in an awesome way. And, God, man, that's church. Tokusatsu just really has a way of making the world make a little bit more sense, It just makes shit easier. That goes for all media. Whether you watch this junk or you love movies in general or music or comics or video games, that's what this stuff is all about. It doesn't have to be as extreme as a revision of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ like apparently Subaraya was doing, but it can be as extreme as that. Fiction of all kinds has a real moving power on people, and that's the shit that I really believe in. Art helps, man. Art's the best. I've been into this genre for about 10 years. I started out with Super Sentai and then Kamen Rider and then just kind of stuck with that for a very long time. Along the way, I tried out Ultraman a couple times to no real avail. It just didn't click with me. It was so different, not just in production, but in theme from Kamen Rider and Sentai, and it still seems to be a hard sell for a lot of people that already really like this genre. I finally got in with Rube from last year, but I think probably the best choice for newcomers is to just look at the original series. It's so special, and it's a genuine watershed moment for the entire genre, that if you're serious about this stuff, you probably owe it to yourself to check this out, and look at a little piece of history. It's probably one of my favorite Toku shows ever at this point. I just love it to pieces. With how dark and unbearable the actual real-life world proves to be lately, I've never found a better time to bring Ultraman into my rotation. I'm forever thankful for its creative science fiction and its optimism in the capabilities of humanity if we can just find it in ourselves to come together and make real change. It's inspirational and comforting and true. It's a bit embarrassing that it's taken me this long, but I'm so glad that I made it to this point with this show. And, it's not the be-all, end-all answer to all your dark questions like it is for Ultra Q. It's not a fucking doctrine or whatever, even though I just said that it's, better than the New Testament, whatever. It's just a legendary piece of work that has real love in its heart. And that is all that I can ask from a show. It's the best. Okay, that is it for that. I am actually gonna kind of try and keep it a little brief with this little segment here at the end. I usually kind of just gab on for a little bit, but I think I'm gonna make a update video soon. Just update on the channel and stuff. I kind of see this as a good marking off point for this kind of quote-unquote pilot season for Explode When Defeated. I think I've gotten to a point where my videos, I think, have transformed in a meaningful way from the Kuga video to this video, and I think I've kind of gained a process. So we're going to see where we're going to move on from there. So I'll do an update video soon. I think probably in the next week or so, to kind of bring you guys up to speed and as to the plan for Explode When Defeated, because I think I've come to a point now where I kind of know where I'm going, and I'm also trying to figure out where I need to go next. So, yes, obviously I'm gonna. I already know what I'm working on for the next couple reviews and stuff, but I think it's after that point is where we're kind of trying to see what's happening. But, yes, thank you so much for watching this video. If you somehow watched my Dragon Quest video and then came in from there, then you are a real trooper because you came in from a video games video and are watching a channel that has nothing to do with that, really. Yeah, so Thank you guys for watching this video so much. I worked really hard on it, and the script was something I was like nervous about, but also really excited about because I really went to an interesting place with it. And I love this show. It's one of my favorites now. It's so great, and I can't recommend it enough. I do not necessarily think that you have to watch Ultra Q to get to this. So, like, don't worry about if you're not so interested in Ultra Q, just not jumping into this. Like, just watch Ultraman, please, God. Just above all else, just watch this show. It's so good. So yeah, I'll see you guys later. I'm keeping it brief, and as brief as I can, because I keep talking. And I'll see you guys very soon with an update video, I think. See you guys later. Bye-bye.